Welcome to Final Fantasy Weekly. I'm Drew Kreisman.
And I'm Ira Kreisman.
And on this episode, we continue our conversation on Final Fantasy VIII. When last we left our hero, he was getting his face sliced open by a friend or of some sort. We'll get into all that. But we had left with just the intro of Final Fantasy VIII, the opening cutscene, which once it got into what I'll call real time or current time, which in this story, as we've mentioned, is going to get more and more confusing as we go. But in our present, if we're playing through the game, right, we haven't really done anything with the controller yet, but we see Squall and Cypher, the two characters we're going to talk a lot about throughout these episodes, fighting each other. And on first playthrough, I didn't realize the reveal that was going to come up here, which is that they were just in training.
Right.
Which is interesting.
Yeah, and it seems to have been that, like, it was kind of a challenge. Like, they're at school together. They weren't trying to kill each other. But it was definitely a fight. Like, I challenge you to training. Oh, training? All right, bro. Fine. Right. I'll go train with you. Prick.
And so the first in-engine, in-game image that we see, if you will, is Squall lying in a hospital bed, recovering from this training.
Right. He's got a bandage on his head. Right.
He's holding hand on the forehead, the whole deal, and the doctor's asking him how he's feeling. And this is where we get into, again, something that's been a mechanic off and on in Final Fantasy games. We talked about a big decision with Terra. There are certain things with Cloud, obviously, with the love triangle in particular, where you would get to choose things. But there's a lot more of kind of shaping Squall's personality and answering questions and trying to figure out what's going on inside his head. And so you can answer how are you feeling with okay, I guess, or my forehead hurts.
Mm-hmm. Is there... I honestly don't know. Is there any sort of gameplay reason why it should matter? Or you just choose the ones that you feel like Squall would say?
That I don't remember. I don't remember if that's a mechanic at all in this game. We'll have to go look that up and get back to it in a future episode. So if you answer, okay, I guess, Dr. Kadawaki?
I think Kadawaki is correct.
Dr. Kadawaki says, well, then take it easy next time. And if you say, my forehead hurts, she says, well, no kidding.
You don't say. Thought you lived at a school.
So again, she kind of scolds him and says, take it easy next time. And Squall says, hey man, tell that to Cypher. And we get a little exposition through dialogue here where the doctor says, oh, Cypher, he won't listen to anyone. Why don't you just ignore him? The classic, why don't you just ignore the bully?
Uh-huh. I was going to say, how many times did a teacher say to you, why don't you just ignore them?
A lot.
We are specifically trained not to do that anymore.
Good.
There are a variety of ways to help students with bullying. Yeah, but why don't you just ignore them doesn't really work. Yeah, I also remember, why don't you try to empathize with them? That's not my job. Hang on.
Yeah. Oof.
No. I'm not the adult here. Also, I'm not a therapist.
Right.
Now I am the adult. And I'm still not a trained therapist, but teachers wear a lot of different hats.
Right. And this is interesting to me, Ira, because it might seem like such a small interaction, but I think this sets up so much of who Squall is versus who people see Squall as, which is a little bit different than the dichotomy of who Cloud is versus who Cloud sees himself as, right?
Right.
And Squall doesn't have, like you said, the emotional maturity to say all the things that you just said. He just says, I can't run away. I can't just run away.
Right.
And the doctor assumes that's because he's trying to be cool. And just says, hey, look, I understand you're a kid. You're trying to be cool. You're trying to be tough. Just don't get hurt. All right? So she's looking out for him, and she sees a little bit of that. But I think, again, as we come to learn more and more about Squall, we'll see that I can't run away isn't really about him looking cool or being tough. It is more about what you just said and about standing up and having a different sense of justice than that, but not having the language or maturity to express those things.
Nice.
So that's actually a perfect lead in to what we normally do, these very short character studies, so we make sure that everyone has a general idea of who we're talking about with Squall Leonhardt here, this main character. And this is also the point where you can choose to name him whatever you want. We, of course, always go by the canon names. And Squall is 17 years old, which is an easy thing to forget because he's a natural-born leader at a military academy that grows military children, something we're going to talk more about in just a second. But he's very young, even compared to other Final Fantasy heroes who are 19 or 21. I think Terra was 17.
Yeah, there really is a thing, especially in heroic fantasy adventure, of having young heroes. I think because there's an idealistic heroism to being young, as opposed to when you get old and practical like me.
Right.
So yeah, but it's a bunch of children.
Right. He's not especially tall or large. He's 5'8", kind of lean like a lot of these guys. He's got that classic bomber jacket with the fur on top of it, kind of looking like a old school air fighter pilot, which is pretty neat, even though he's not a pilot by any means.
It's just a cool jacket.
Yeah, just a cool jacket.
Makes him look a little bit like a lion.
Right. We'll talk more about the last name later on. And again, we've gotten the sense of the personality a little bit already, but I think it's tempting to want to loop him in with other stoic heroes, and Final Fantasy has a lot of these, or people who are emotionally stunted or whatever, but there is a unique way in which Squall is handled, and obviously a lot of this story is about how that unfolds, but he is sort of presented up front on the surface level as similar to that, right? The cold, stoic soldier who doesn't really show his emotions and thinks about getting the job done and doing the duty, and he's kind of just annoyed by everyone else for a lot. And I think that's a lot of reason why some people never attach themselves to the character.
Right. I agree with, I buy all of that. But in some ways he is just kind of annoyed by people wanting to get involved. He doesn't want to, part of his journey is figuring out how to allow people to be his friend. Right? He doesn't get all that in the beginning. And so he is kind of annoyed with everybody. Right. Much like myself. But he also just lives. There's going to be parts where I'm looking at the screen, seeing what's going on. I'm replaying it. I haven't played it in a long time. I'm thinking, wait, what? Why? That doesn't make any sense. And then we'll get Squall's thoughts and he'll be like, what is going on here?
Yeah.
So he lives a lot of his life in his own head, which is also me.
Yeah.
Which is why I felt attached to him early on back in the late 90s, and now again on this playthrough when I'm trying to figure out everybody else's motivations, but I've got Squall's inner thoughts.
Yeah, I really like what you said there, that I think more than any other character, he lives his life inside of his own head. And not just in this story, I mean in Final Fantasy, that's one of his defining attributes, is that he's really, introspective might not even be the right word, because it's not like he does a ton of thinking about himself. He thinks about the world, and he doesn't express those thoughts more often than not. And so the game almost had to give us his constant running inner monologue. Otherwise, he would be a boring, stoic character. But you're right that we get to know what he's thinking. It's so well done, and we'll get into all that. Then we get an early example, Ira, of this both wonderfulness and weirdness and potential issues with Final Fantasy VIII, because I remember this being incredibly confusing on the first time. For just a moment, in the room next to the hospital bed where he is, some young girl kind of walks partway into view. We really don't see her. We just see her arm and her clothing, and she says, "Squall, so we meet again." And she leaves. And then in walks Quistis.
Right.
And in my first playthrough, I thought that was Quistis. So I didn't read any more into like, oh, that was weird and odd in a certain reaction. I thought it was just Quistis being like, oh, so we meet again here at the hospital thing. And then she comes in and has that great CGI entrance where she rolls her eyes at him and says, oh, I knew it'd be you or Cypher. And so I thought it was the same person. I didn't realize that I was supposed to understand there was a third person in the room until they mention it much later.
Yeah, there are some folks who misunderstand foreshadowing as something you're supposed to understand all along the way.
Right.
And there are ways to do foreshadowing that way. That's fine. But foreshadowing is often the thing you understand the second or third time you play, right? So it's fine. It is fine if you don't get that who this person is the very first time you play. In fact, I would be surprised if anybody understood. Like I didn't, it's different color scheme than Quistis, fine. But not knowing who this person is or that she's important is fine on your first playthrough.
Right.
And we're not going to see her face for a while either. We don't see her face here, and then later we're going to like re-meet her, but her face is, the blocking of the scene is that her face is hidden by a lamp for part of it.
Right.
Which is really interesting.
Yeah.
I have to assume all of that was on purpose, which contrasts with Quistis, who comes in and whose expressions are immediately important. Like even in her sort of, not Final Fantasy VII blocky, but even in, I'm playing the remaster right now, so it's much better. But even like in the sort of pixelated version of her, just her body language is so expressive, which goes back to your observation last time about this potentially playing out like a silent movie. So I love that she just immediately rolls her eyes and is exasperated with Squall for having been injured in a training accident. So good.
Right. It also introduces this fun thing that Final Fantasy VIII does, where it introduces all of the playable cast with these very short, very memorable little cutscenes that I like it. It's just a neat thing they did. So like I said, she mentioned she knew when she got a call to come to the hospital, it was going to be either Cypher or Squall. She says, just get up, let's go. Today's the field exam. And so she gets Squall up and they start walking out, and we get one of these great shots. And this is something that Final Fantasy VIII did better than probably any game that ever came before it, was the transition from just the regular gameplay into these sweeping, like sort of semi-cut scenes, and sometimes even into full-on CGI cut scenes. But we get this zoom out as they leave and have to kind of walk out in the corridor, and a sweeping view of Balamb Garden and
yes,
kids walking through the courtyard, and the music comes in, and it's just, compared to where we just were, Fitos, the world-ending imagery and stuff, it's like, now we're in this very serene calm. What do you make of that juxtaposition in tone here?
Yeah, the game's going to do that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Because this is, like you said, it's a private military installation, right? These are kids, teenagers to young adults, being trained to be mercenaries, but also the music here is really chill.
Yeah.
And why is that? There's seeds. That the metaphor here is almost like kindergarten, right? Like you're growing young people to help shape the future. Okay, cool. But also they're learning to chop each other up in the face. Yeah, the juxtaposition. God, trying to find the genre for this story, right? Maybe the genre is juxtaposition.
Oh,
that's not a genre. But that it's kind of a spy thriller in a lot of ways too, because I don't know what anybody's motivation is right now. What is going on? I like that it will have these really tense moments, and then things will chill out for a while. And then we're going to have some really tense moments again. And then, we're overhearing people giggle about, having a boyfriend once they graduate or whatever.
Right. There's just a ton of that. And Final Fantasy's always done that. But this is, it's on another level. And another interesting juxtaposition, to your point, you brought up how a lot of the things that are going to happen are going to be very confusing on the surface level for a while. But there's also a lot of world building and lore that I feel like, well, less lore actually, but the world building in particular, that is done by showing without telling, that's remarkable here. Like, we immediately understand if the soldiers are called the Seed and the school/academy is called the Garden, like that immediately, okay, of course, that makes sense, right? Where these terms might have come from. I don't know why the D in seed is capitalized. I've never understood that.
Yeah. It's cool.
Right, but it's cool. And there's a lot of cool, like, sci-fi, just like the way the garden works and looks and operates. All the guns are different. We're going to talk about the ships here in a little bit. And, like, I just watched Avatar last night, the new one, The Way of Water. And that's something that James Cameron, for wherever else you'll love or hate about his movies, is really, really good at, where every little thing has a different kind of practical functionality that would be different for their world. Right, and one of the things I love about Final Fantasy VIII is we really get a sense of a world that is entirely its own weird alien thing, but enough of it feels familiar that it's still kind of homey. It's remarkable. So Quistis and Squall, and we pronounce her name Quistis, by the way. I know there are some Quistis fans out there. And,
that makes sense.
Yeah. Quistis, Trepe?
I've always said Trep.
Yeah. Again, there's a lot of that in this game, actually. It's like, is this supposed to be French or Italian, or are we just sort of borrowing from and smashing together? Because that's what Final Fantasy does. But this is where we get a great bit of, again, show don't tell. We understand who she is through this walk and talk. It's like an Aaron Sorkin scene where they're...
Yeah, and they talk over each other.
Yeah.
Which is interesting when you're doing it with text boxes.
Yeah. Because, she's kind of asking him, hey, what's on your mind? And he's trying to blow her off. But every time he says something like, oh, nothing, or not really, or blah, 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 she'll say it right on top of him. She's making fun of him. Not for being simple. She actually even says at one point, he goes, what's so funny? Why are you laughing at me? Why do you keep doing that? What is this? And she says, I'm actually happy because I feel like I'm beginning to understand my student a little. So in all that, we understand that they have this special relationship, that she is the teacher, he is the student, though that's all a little confusing, but unless you talk to all the students around the school. But that, and then Squall says, again here early on, I'm more complex than you think. And then she says, well, tell me about it. But that's not really Squall's love language, is it? Right? Like, talking.
Squall's love language is...
Yeah. Well, right. Well, we'll get back to that. But he goes, it's none of your, and then they both go, business, right? Yeah, it's none of my business. Yeah, I'm right there with you, buddy. And she just kind of chuckles at him and walks off, and then you can explore a little bit if you want to, but ultimately you end up heading up to class. As you heard, today is the day for the field exam. And then they just start throwing a bunch of tutorials at you.
Yeah. So we talked last time in 7 about how one of the reasons we trust Cloud is he gives us some of the tutorials. He knows how the world works. He knows how the game works. He teaches the players. Here, it's our teacher, the instructor, who gives the tutorials. And I think, even though there's just a lot of them, and it can be a lot, I like that it's the instructor who gives them.
Right. Yeah, this setup actually makes perfect in-world sense and actually is a great way for, like I said, you can run around the school and talk to a bunch of people and get a little bit of history on and get some hints for what's coming later and just kind of understand a little bit about the world. But you can also kind of blaze right through it. And it is a good way to set up like why you would get a bunch of instruction at the beginning of the game. I do think for pacing, it's a little bit rough on replay. But you can also kind of blaze through it in the remaster, and I definitely did that because it's like, if you've played it before, but man, if it's your first time playing this game, it's a lot of information up front, and I think they could have maybe spaced it out a little better. Sure.
And quite honestly, speaking of not understanding the story the first time through, I didn't understand the gameplay the first time through.
Sure, right.
Like I had to, the second time I played the game, I was like, oh, I get Junction now. Yeah. This makes way more sense.
Yeah, no, totally, right? Probably because there was so much information to try to digest at the beginning of the game. But once you get the hang of it, yeah. But anyway, after all of that, Quistis says that she needs to speak with Squall and that they need to go do one special mission ahead of time because he hasn't yet gone to the fire cavern and gotten his Guardian Force, his GF, which in the days before texting and DMing, they didn't know GF was going to become just the common for girlfriend. So it's funny whenever I see like a new streamer or something playing Final Fantasy VIII for the first time, and they're like, "We're going to introduce you to your GF," and they're like, "Wait, what?"
It's also a dating sim.
Yeah, right.
I do want to point out that at the end of her instruction, she says, "Oh, by the way, do not injure your partner while training."
Yeah,
Cypher.
Yeah.
Because he's in the class too. Like, in fact, they're both sitting in the back and slouching, which I also love. They're very similar in a lot of ways, and that's part of the point, right? Like, they're mirrors of each other.
Right.
But, Cypher's ambitions versus Squall's sense of duty, I think, is the big thing that separates them.
Right. You can also be introduced to Quistis's fan club, fangirls here. These girls who are absolutely in love with everything that Quistis does, and that's
and
fun
why
and
not?
interesting. Yeah.
So on the way out, Squall runs into a girl. She's doing the white rabbit. I'm late. She's missed homeroom.
We all know that feeling, right?
God.
If you were a student at the time, and we both were. In fact, you had just gone off to college, right? So a lot of this campus stuff is like brings back certain like haunting memories of like, I missed homeroom? Oh, come on.
God. So she asks Squall, "Can you give me a tour real quick?" So you don't have to, and I'm not sure if there's any in-game mechanical reason or mechanical change if you do or don't. But if you do, you basically get you get a tour.
Right.
Squall gives all of us a tour of the garden, and here's the parking lot, and here's the training center, and so on and so forth. And it's just kind of a nice thing to do. And we will find out later that this is a character who's going to join our party. Her name is Selfie, and we'll talk more about her when we're fully introduced. But this also goes back to the thing you were talking about, like all the way in 6, where sometimes characters are introduced before they're introduced. Dr. Kadawaki mentions, calls Quistis to come fetch her student and calls her by name before she shows up. And here's another character who we meet before we fully meet.
You can also just tell her no and skip all of that.
Which is rude, but is that something Squall would do?
So, it is kind of interesting, right? I'm not sure it's actually in keeping with Squall's personality that he would take his time out to show the entire school to a new student he's never met. But I don't know, maybe that does underlie a certain sense of, well, she's a student here and she should know how everything works. Maybe she'll be an asset in battles in the future, even if he's thinking of it that logically, right? I don't know, maybe it's hints of, again, he does care about people, and while he cannot say words to express it, he can at the very least walk you around the school and give you facts. That's this thing,
sure.
That's the dorm, that's the thing. The headmaster is named Sid. Again, that's something you wouldn't learn till later if you skip all this and when he's introduced, but if you do this part, you get some info, and he can distribute facts. This he can do. So after all that, you meet up with Quistis again at the front of the school to head out to the fire cavern, and you get another big long tutorial a tutorial about how Guardian forces work, and I'm not going to go through it. We're going to save that for the gameplay episode, but it's very confusing if you've never done it before, especially if you're kind of familiar with other Final Fantasy systems and you want it to work similarly, because it just doesn't, and so you almost kind of have to unlearn the other games and then learn this one. Yeah,
absolutely. But I'm enjoying it.
And part of a symbol of that is, by the way, that the first Guardian force that you get is Quetzalcoatl. So a lightning summon that is new and unique to this game rather than Ramu.
Yeah.
So after several tutorials, not only does she explain Guardian forces, but like junctioning, how to use Squall's gunblade. And this was after several that you can read about at the computer inside. It's a lot, but the computer is a good way, again, of separating us. And this game does such a good job, as I feel they all do in their opening acts, of saying, this is how we're different from the other ones. And this feels so different.
Yeah, it really does. In a way, it reminds me of Final Fantasy II. Because you can just learn basically all the things after a fashion.
Right.
Right? It almost doesn't matter which character is a specialist in a gunblade versus a specialist in fist fighting versus, able to use blue magic. Like, those things matter far less than how do you junction your materia or your, whatever it is, guardian force and magic and whatnot. Right? Which is, we kind of talked about that in 7 and 6 also. When you can learn all the spells, well,
yeah,
maybe the differences in character, but for fighting matters less. But it is very different, and that's one of the things I love about it. It's just a different way to think about playing a Final Fantasy game.
Yeah. So it's off to the fire cavern for Squall and Quistis.
And we're introduced to... These guys are weird, right? Like, there are a couple guards on either side of the fire cavern, and they're the ones who explain, okay, you're a low-level seed or low-level seed, trainee or whatever. You got to do the thing. Got it. Fine. These guys are creepy.
Yeah, they look like they don't have heads.
Right at first.
Yeah, I get it's like a weird headgear design, and you can't see their faces, which is very... we've talked about that in our Empires and Rebels episodes, about the bad guys covering up their faces, to put it plainly.
Uh-huh. Yeah, they're just standing there, and at first it seems kind of banal, but just that initial introduction of not being able to see their faces, and it looks like maybe they don't have heads, but rather these big, round, yellow hood things that turn out to be hats just tilted way down.
Right.
But they're deliberately, I think, off-putting immediately. And I don't trust these guys, and it turns out I'm right. So at least I know one thing.
Yeah, right.
This weird spy thriller, magical realism, juxtaposition story.
And there are a few of them, if you wander around the school, like there's one in the library that will complain that the dusters have not come in and kept it spotless. Like, so they appear to be like some sort of weird custodians. It's like Filch from the series that shall not be named.
Sure.
How ironic is that?
Absolutely.
I'm running with that forever from now on.
I refer to her as the author who shall not be named.
It's perfect.
Yeah.
It's the one thing we're keeping, and the rest of it can go. Well, I'll still watch the movies sometimes, but, anyway. But yeah, it's kind of like there's an army of the groundskeeper character, right? Who's creepy and off-putting and, like, overly obsessive about the rules. And, yeah, it's an interesting thing to have. So you head into the fire cavern, and Quistis keeps teasing Squall. She says, some of the boys choke when they come on this mission with me because I make them nervous.
Yeah, which is not appropriate for a teacher-student relationship. On the other hand, she is also only like 17 years old.
Right.
I started teaching around 25, for what it's worth. And it can be a little awkward, being in charge and not feeling like I've been an adult for very long. So that was always strange, but never would I have said anything like that. That feels, I don't know, not appropriate, Instructor Trepp.
So since you mentioned it, Quistis is just 18. She's only a year older than Squall. Okay. So it's like she's a TA or something. She is a teacher's assistant, and I think we'll get more into it later. A bit of a prodigy, which is part of why she's got a fan club if she's already instructing at the Balamb Military Academy at 18 years old. That's damned impressive. But yeah, she's also still a teenager as well. And while it's never really explicitly stated, and we've talked before about how this is a unique genre of anime where there are these military academies or like these emotionally stunted children who all they know is like being trained in war. Ender's Game is another interesting example of stuff like that, right? Some of that in Halo, absolutely. And they don't talk a ton explicitly about it, but I think through their actions, we understand that all of these characters are emotionally stunted in certain ways. Because how could you be a well-adjusted person with normal social skills when you've grown up in a world that, like you said, has been training you to be a mercenary since, if you're graduating at 17 and 18, how long you've been doing this? Right.
And we're about to find out that there's a lot of war in this world. There's an empire that's trying to expand its borders. There was a big war only about 17 years ago. Like, the whole world is recovering from this giant conflict. And it seems like a lot of these Final Fantasy worlds are like just scraping by in a lot of ways. Like even if you take out the expansionist imperial tendencies of Galbadia, as we're about to learn, there's still monsters all over the goddamn place.
Right.
So it's hard to have a childhood when your town could be wrecked by a behemoth at any moment.
Right. Right. So as you proceed through the fire cavern, you get more tutorials about, how ice will beat fire stuff. This is where we're like, oh, okay, good. I feel at home. This is okay. That's something that felt comfortable. Thank you. And then Quistis junctions the Shiva guardian force to herself. So again, yes, comfortable Final Fantasy things. Here we go. I like that. And then another one, because at the end of the fire cavern, it turns out the test here, the mission to decide that you can even go on the seed qualification mission is to fight Ifrit.
Yeah. Puny humans.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or I think he says insolent, but whatever.
It gives a little speech, that whole thing. There's a fun bit where if you do cast Shiva during the battle, he'll be like, oh, they have her. What? Which, again, is so great. It hints at these kinds of their backstory that we don't get any of, but that there could be, that they know each other. What's going on there? What does that mean? I don't know. I'm not sure we ever find out, but it's interesting, but I like it.
Yeah.
To your point about the thing earlier, it's okay to not know.
Which is good, because there's a lot of stuff we're not going to know for a while.
So, of course, because as always, we are very good at these video games, or we're using the cheats because we're old now and we ain't got time for that shit. We defeat Ifrit, and therefore have successfully concluded that mission. Quistis says, excellent job, gives you one last tutorial, and says, time to switch into your official seed uniform for the big test.
It's worth noting that there are two different uniforms. There's a more bluish one that is like the student seeds.
Right.
And then if you graduate, you get a black and gold one.
Right. So Squall gets to put on that uniform for the first time. This is something, again, that I feel like in a television show or a film, or if done today with even more disk space, you could make a bigger meal out of in the game. It's just sort of I know he's wearing this, but it's oh man, I would have loved a little scene where that's some classic military nonsense, sure. Right? Just pulling on the thing and being this. The
CW superhero shows do that a lot.
Yeah.
And and then they get a cool hero shot, which is, there's a lot that I would do differently in those shows, but there's a lot they do quite well also.
Yeah. And then again, it's time to meet Quistis back at the front of the school to get the assignment. And she's explaining that she's handing out the Squall assignments for the exam. And she says, you will be with, let's see now, it looks like Zell Dinkt.
Hey, Zell.
You're excited to see Zell.
I like Zell. And speaking of those little introductions, right? Yeah. So he's, who he reminds me of most recently is Zack. He's the hyperactive, going to do squats in the background, running around, swinging his fists at the air. Zack can't hold still, right? Throughout that whole game, he's doing squats in the back of the truck. He's going to tell Cloud all about how we're going to be mercenaries and we're going to do great together, right? I feel like that's who Zell is in a lot of ways. There's differences, obviously, but we're introduced to him, and he's going through his punching kata or whatever and swinging and doing jump kicks and whatnot. and Squall's response is lively. He's just loud.
Yeah.
Which, if I met Zell in real life, I would probably feel that way, right? Because, oh God, give it a rest.
It's a lot of energy.
So are you suggesting then that Zell is not liked by the wider community? Is that why you're asking me?
Indeed, that does seem to be the case. And it's interesting that you compared him to Zack, because I think that's very true, and yet Zack is incredibly popular and Zell is very much not. Now, Zack gets to be also a super badass, and Zell, I think, a little bit more often plays the role of the bumbling idiot.
Yeah.
Tends to screw up. Tends to not know. There's a lot of comedic, the things with the hot dogs and stuff that we'll get into. But at the same time, I don't know, man. Again, his introductory CGI cutscene here, again, the perfect encapsulation of who he is. Because he's shadowboxing in the middle of the hallway.
Right.
But he's really good at it.
Yeah. Yeah. And he's got a face tattoo. What do you think of the face tattoo?
Yeah. Long before Mike Tyson had his face tattoo. This was the first face tattoo I'd ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
It's weird, but again, everyone in this world, I guess it just so heightened to me. So many other Final Fantasies feel Earth adjacent. We've talked about that before, right? Like, this could have been a version of Earth, but if magic was real and things had developed differently, right?
Sure. That's 15 in a lot of ways. In fact, 15 looks so much like Western Colorado that I got nostalgic almost immediately.
Yeah.
But this place, there's very few sharp corners, right? Like Balamb Garden is all rounded. And when we get to the town of Balamb, it is also very rounded. Now, there are some spots when we go to Dalet, I think it becomes more sort of square European-esque-ish.
Yeah.
But there is a lot of not familiar. And so I agree with you. Introducing this character, just this upbeat, grinning, thumbs up, shadowboxing dork with this goofy face tattoo is just kind of alien. At least it felt alien to me at the time.
Yeah. Everything is just a little off. It feels more like it's a completely different world. And the custom, every single custom, every piece of clothing. We're going to see some vehicles here in a minute. And, in Final Fantasy VII, we saw trucks and motorcycles and helicopters, but they kind of look like trucks and motorcycles and helicopters from our world. Maybe even like specifically 30s, 40s, and 50s models of certain cars or whatever. And every vehicle in this, it just looks like it's out of Star Wars or Dune or something like that, right? It's just, it's a weird thing. Or I mentioned Avatar. It's just its own weird thing. And I love every element of this world.
Even the salute the seeds give is weird.
Yeah.
I don't know that it's any weirder than our real world salutes, but
sure,
it's not what I expect. Even the Final Fantasy X salute thing, the sort of bowing thing, that makes a certain amount of sense to me. This one is just like holding their hand up. I don't know. It's weird.
Yeah, it's weird.
The whole thing's weird. I think that's going to be the watchword for this.
So,
for this game.
Yeah. Do a very small drink of something very safe every time we say weird. At this point, Ira, we get another tutorial.
Oh, good Lord.
We have to learn how Zell's limit break works. This one's fairly simple, so it's fine. And then we learn that the third member of the team, and of course the leader of the team, will be Cypher. How did we not see that coming?
Exactly. Ugh. So who do you think Squall is least excited to work with, Zell or Cypher?
That is a great question. Honestly, probably Zell. At this specific moment, I feel like Squall is the devil you know kind of guy, right? He's like, I know what I'm dealing with Cypher. I can put up with his, I know what it's going to be. I'm going to follow the orders. I'm going to do my job. But with Zell, it's like, this guy is going to annoy the hell out of me the whole way.
I can already feel the headache coming.
Yeah. Squall is between a rock and a hard place, so to speak. We're also introduced to Cypher's lackeys here, though I don't think they say anything. They're just with him. Fujin and Raijin, we'll learn more about them later.
Yeah.
But they're there, which I think, again, it goes to your point making earlier about introducing before actually introducing. Like, we'll learn a lot more about them later. For now, it's just interesting to see them there. And so after being, just starts going right in, being a dick, he tells Quistis not to wish him luck because she should save those words for a bad student who needs them. And then she says, okay, well then good luck, Cypher.
Yeah, man, she's not, this is the Agreus Gafgarian back and forth that we loved so much last time.
Yes.
All right. How would you bite me then, you little prick? I mean.
Right. I love this line, too, because it reminded me so very much of one of my favorite random-ass things from professional wrestling over the last 10 years. Chris Jericho had this hilarious gimmick where he would add people to the list. whenever they did something that pissed him off, whatever. That's it. You just made the list. And it was never clear what happens when you get on the list. And like
Sure.
nobody would ever ask. Like it was the running joke, right? It was just people would make the list and the list would get longer and longer. And nobody like, but the other wrestlers would really sell it like it was the worst thing in the world that they just got added. That like, no, don't add me to the list.
Not the list.
Right.
One of the things that cracks me up about people who critique professional wrestling is that they don't seem to understand that it's largely a vaudeville comedy act.
Yes. Right. They're all in
Like
on the joke.
Like I get that it's, naked people and violence also.
Right.
But it's all a joke, y'all. Lighten up.
So Cypher says, add instructor Trape to the list. I love that because it's such a like threat of like absolute absurdity. It's fantastic.
Well, and we get Squall's inner monologue. He's like, "Oh, that's the whole disciplinary committee," which is a weird thing to have in a school. Like, why are students the disciplinary committee?
Right.
But then also the list. What is that?
What is
he doesn't say any of this out loud. This is just for us and him.
Right. And then so Quistis says, look, this is what's going on here. These are the assignments. Cypher's in charge. Teamwork is important. That's part of what you're being graded on here. Get through the exam, everyone. And then Cypher says, hey, teamwork means staying out of my way.
And he's already failed the mission, right?
Right. I assume she just wrote down right then, and F.
Right. I also get the impression that he's done this test more than once.
Oh, they mentioned that in a minute here, yeah.
Oh, do they? Okay, good.
You get a hint of it here, but they're about to say that explicitly. And then we are introduced to the headmaster. And actually, when Cypher walked out, the music, the like nice calm music for the garden goes away, and that whole scene that we just did is silent with no music in it whatsoever of Cypher just being a dick. And then the like serious, important military music kicks in, and just the seriousness of the scene very palpably changes, and the headmaster walks into view, and everyone straightens up. As much as they weren't really respecting Quistis, none of them really were respecting Quistis' leadership here. When the headmaster shows up, they all straighten up.
So Headmaster Sid Kramer, is a portly older fellow in a sweater vest and a tie and slacks. And he looks an awful lot like Robin Williams. Even in his sort of pixelated character model, he looks kind of like Robin Williams. But if you get into the character portraits, in fact, this was something I noted in the magazines before the game was even released. Like, hey, they made Sid look kind of like Robin Williams.
Right.
I have to assume that was on purpose, but maybe not. I don't know. Like, is there... Why do that? Is there a purpose to doing that? Or is it just like, that's a nice trusting face that we can trust? Let's trust that face.
I think a little bit of that, a little bit of both. It evokes for me specifically, if we're honing in, if you've got an image in your head of Jumanji, not that Robin Williams, more of a Dead Poet Society Robin Williams. And I think maybe that's certainly for me, because I just seen that movie for the first time around playing this game. I think what it evoked. So, and I think you're right that Robin Williams, especially in the 90s, was that, and still is, honestly, to this day. And one of those comforting faces, voices, one of those things that So I think it made sense that that's what they were going for. Yeah. So Sid actually begins very casually. I feel like, again, this is very Dumbledore of him to do. Very, It's been a while, everyone. How's everyone doing? Okay, all right, good. And then he gets into, this exam will involve 12 members, squads A through D, and we get the military talk, right? And then he gets into a little bit of philosophy, which is interesting. He says, first of all, he clarifies, these are going to be real battles. You're going to a live war zone now, which is probably why, the prereq to get into this exam was fighting a demon in a fire cave.
It is wild to me that the field test, is an actual military raid that they've been hired to conduct.
Right? It's wild.
Speaking of juxtaposition, right? Wait, what? That's what we're doing? Wow.
So this is a real battle we are sending these 17-year-olds into to pass their exams. And he says, life and death, victory and defeat, honor and disgrace, each of these go hand in hand. There is only one or the other. Interesting. And then he kind of gives him one last, are you still up for it? You know, make sure you're going to go and that you're in the best mind and spirit. He says there will also be 9 actual seed members on the mission. He says, so if you fail, they will succeed because they always do. Damn.
Jeez. Wow. All right. I'm going to do a sidebar here real quick.
Yeah.
Child soldiers.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bad idea, probably.
In the real world, horrible, awful thing.
Yeah.
Don't do it. On the other hand, in the real world, we sign up 17-year-olds to join the military.
Sure.
I work at a high school. I see it all the time. On the other hand, well, no, let me put it this way. What is the difference, and there are several, but philosophically, what is the difference between Grand Duke Barrington of Final Fantasy Tactics and Sid Kramer of Final Fantasy VIII, even leaving aside the soul?
I was going to say outside of all the other, yeah.
all the obvious horribleness, but like training children to be soldiers in a dangerous world where not only is the world seem to be constantly at war, but also, you know, your civilization might be destroyed by a living natural disaster because monsters.
Right. I think this is one of the reasons why they chose the setting that they did to make it feel more alien, because I think the only answer to your question is that one of those things has been institutionalized and the other hasn't. And I think that that's kind of what this trope of anime and this particular game and some other games that have done it. I don't know too much live action stuff that has done the like teenager at the military academy. If anyone is into anime and this concept, I highly recommend the film Sky Crawlers, which has an interesting caveat to it where these type of children don't age, like past the age of 16, and they're all expert fighter pilots, and it's really bizarre and interesting. They live at a school/academy, right? It's very similar. And oftentimes the point is like, this looks awful to you because it should, because when we make it a little bit more alien, you're going, now wait a minute, you're sending the babies to war?
Right.
But then like you said, you see it every day. It's just part of the institution that military recruiters can show up to high schools and sign kids up to do this with promises that may never come true. So, yeah, it's something worth thinking about. So then they all pile into this big, weird car, truck, van thing. Again, nothing is normal. Nothing in this world looks like something from our world. So it's just a vehicle that can accommodate. And because it's a military vehicle, this is clearly not meant to transport civilians. Nothing about the inside of this thing looks comfortable. Like they're all sitting on metal chairs, like they're strapped in. There's a big, long table in the middle, which seems like it's there for maybe the smallest amount of, if you wanted to put food on it, but it's probably more for like setting weapons or something, right? It's just like, yeah, everything is so bizarre. And now all of our people are literally like packed into a small space and can really get on each other's nerves.
Right. And Zell does annoy me here because hey, Squall, show me your gunblade, huh? Let me see it. Come on, man, just a peek. Come on.
Look at your weapon.
God Lord. And then he like gets up and starts shadow boxing again. Quistis is like, oh, good Lord. She rolls her eyes, even though like her character model does not have eyes.
Right.
Right. It's like, oh, good Lord.
Oh yeah. And then Cypher, Ira, we gotta talk about this phrase.
Yeah.
He calls Zell a chicken wuss.
Seems like a very mild sort of swear.
I feel like they really wanted to make sure they didn't say too horrible of a thing. As we all know, if you like follow the etymology of that too far, you can get to what he probably meant, which is what a bully probably would have said in this situation, a derogatory phrase about female anatomy. But
yep,
they tried to go so like just say something else entirely. This is maybe one phrase where it's like chicken wuss. So it lacks, I feel like, the badassery or even the like effective bulliness that maybe Cypher would need. But again, in this world, maybe that's the worst thing you can call somebody. I don't know.
I am of two minds because it feels a little silly. On the other hand, I feel like part of Cypher's bullying technique is to not take his victims seriously at all.
Oh yeah. And
so using such a silly phrase against Zell just shows how dismissive he is of him.
Yeah.
Furthermore, And I don't want to get into spoilers too much, but he's been calling him Chicken Wuss for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's part of it, right? We're gonna have to sort of dance around. I mean, if you know, you know. But as I have learned, some folks are learning about some of these stories for the first time from us.
Right.
So I'm trying to dance around things a little bit. But part of the point here is
that's ingrained.
Some of these guys, yeah, they've known each other a long time. There's some stuff that they kind of remember, but they can't really remember.
Yeah.
And so.
And it definitely sounds like the kind of thing a little kid would say.
Yes,
a middle
it does.
school-aged kid would say.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely. And they're not far removed from that time.
They're really not. And again, emotionally stunted. And then Squall has a brief moment through all the chaos where he asks Quistis about the girl in the infirmary this morning. So then I was really confused. I was like, I thought she was the girl in the infirmary this morning.
Right.
But then I get it. There was another person there. But Quistis says, I didn't see anybody. Was there a problem? And Squall goes, nope, not really. Then why'd you... again, I get he's frustrating, but, just, that was weird, right? And he doesn't have a reason at this point to wonder deeper about it. We know it's cryptic because we know how stories work. But he doesn't know he's in a story. And then Cypher says, great, I have a chicken wuss and some guy who just reached puberty in my squad. He thinks Squall is like being romantic about some girl when he's really just being like, again, this is more of Squall being misunderstood. As much as Squall is misunderstood in the real world by people who played the game, he's misunderstood in the world he's in by everybody. It's like,
Absolutely.
No, he wasn't like, oh, there was some pretty girl, Quistis. Tell me, he was just like, who to F was that? Misunderstand me all the time.
I'm not sure he is real worried about people misunderstanding him either.
No.
He's annoyed by it. He's confused by it, but it's not like, man, I wish people understood me. It's, man, I wish these people who don't understand me would leave me alone.
At least stop talking to me.
Good Lord. We have a job to do. Everybody quit emoting on me, please.
Right. So they pull up to the pier in Balamb town. Like Iris said, a very strange, round-looking town with... Some things are like cobblestone streets, and some of them look like alien pods. Quite the combination of things. And they pull up to the pier, get out of the super weird land vehicle, and into the incredibly strange sea vehicle.
Yeah. It's a very curvy boat thing.
Yeah. With like
I don't
a
know how to
big
describe
hole in the bottom. It's like it cuts into the water. And
that's the hull, I think.
Yeah,
because you got to push into the water, otherwise you're a raft and you can flip over very easily.
Right.
Yeah.
Also got some like big, interesting propellers on the side,
Mm-hmm.
And again, very clearly military vehicles, like built for the practical far more than the comfortable. So we're all piling into the vessel, and this is where we're introduced to a character named. I'm going to do my best. I think Zhu. It's XU, and it's not just Zoo, and it's not just Shu. It's there's a Zhu sound to it.
Specifically in Mandarin, I think is where we get this name, and it's sort of a cross between an SH and a Z sound.
And she appears to be in charge here because she walks in, says hello to Quistis and no one else. Which I kind of love. It's a small thing. Hi, Quistis. Sit down. And then, they all kind of introduce themselves. And this is where she says, Cypher, how many times has it been now?
Right.
And
Which makes me wonder, what's Cypher's goal in all this? If he's been on several of these exams, he almost certainly knows how to do what it is they want him to do. He's just not doing it.
Right. I do love his response here, though, even though I try not to root for the guy who's being a jackass bully all the time. I love the way he says, well, I don't know the way he says. I can hear it. There's no voice acting. It's a silent film, but I can hear this line the way he goes, oh, I just love these exams.
Remember do you remember? I like doing this because I know you remember, but I'm going to do it anyway.
Yeah.
You remember that movie Top Gun?
Wait, what was it called? Run the title by me. Yeah.
All those smarmy, confident jackasses.
Yes.
And you put them all in one room. That's Cypher. He's every single one of those characters, all the protagonists and antagonists and side characters all at once.
Right.
Oh, I just love these exams.
Right.
Like, you shut up. Take your sunglasses off inside, you dick.
Right. So good. And then this character, Zhu, who we were just introduced to, gives us the briefing for the mission and explains that the Galbadian army is attacking the town of Dalet, D-O-L-L-E-T. So,
I say Dalit in my head.
sure, same, because so far I haven't made any of the words in the game French. Shrep. Quistis.
Yeah, I don't know.
And again, this is one of those great, you get a sense of just how messed up this world is through show. I guess it's a little bit of tell, but it makes sense that you would get this information in a briefing. And that she begins by saying, our client for this mission is the Dalit Dukedom Parliament. Like, we so often think of, and again, when we see war in most film, television, history stuff, it's people fighting on one side of an ideology or another.
Right.
And this is
We're
just
fighting for our people and our way of life.
Yeah.
And that is not what this is at all.
Or even because you killed our guy, so now we kill your guy, even if it's a blood feud, right? That makes it, and this isn't that. This is, they have contracted us out. They're under attack. The G Army, they call them. They arrived 72 hours ago. 49 hours into the battle, Dalit abandoned their position to the inner city. And this is so cold and calculated. And again, the kids here are all just like, they're just going out for their final exams and they're bickering with each other. And they're being contracted into this real battle zone. It's surreal. Mm-hmm. That's another word we can use a lot throughout these episodes. This is surreal.
And it makes me wonder about the sort of geopolitical military situation here. They're fighting against the G Army or Galbadia. So why does the Dalit Dukedom not have their own soldiers? Well, they do, and we're going to meet some of them, but they're nowhere near as good as Seeds or even Seed students.
Right.
Right. So do all the people in and around Dalit who might be good soldiers go to Seed or go to the Garden, right? Because you can get paid to be a soldier there. Right. Right. No, it's all the leftovers. It's the minors.
Right.
If you're in your national military, but if you're going to the majors,
right,
you go off to the Garden.
So she mentions that it is our job essentially to take the city back and just the inner city primarily and secure that area. And Zell says, wow, that sounds really important. Cypher says, that sounds boring. Like, dude, what? Yeah, this is also twisted. But Cypher sees it as doing the dirty work. And again, he's been out on these missions before, so, maybe he's not as... I guess war has become routine, not just for him, but for lots of people in this world. That's a part of that trope that's really disturbing.
Right. And I have to wonder about a world where there are enough military conflicts that you can have them be a final exam for a school on a semi-regular basis.
Right.
Because the other versions of this that I've seen, like in anime and such, that are maybe more palatable are, if you're going to go to the adventure school, your final might be going to the fire cave, right? Going to where the monsters spawn and keeping the monsters at bay, or the demons, or the whatever it might be that threatens all of humanity, not go and fight other human people.
Right.
Yeah, it's just... There was recently a Magic the Gathering set in a very pretty plane. It was based on ancient Egypt, and it looks like a utopia, but all the things that are going on are very dark and grim, and I feel like this does something similar. Like, it looks very pretty, but the events are disturbing if you try to delve into the why of any of it.
Right. And then, Ira, very much to your point, the next thing that Zhu says is, it hardly needs to be said, but the order to withdraw takes priority, which reminds me very much of the recent conversation, semi-recent, in the grand history of the world recent, about how the police actually have no legal obligation to protect you. And that's actually based on a Supreme Court case that came out of Castle Rock, Colorado, right here in my backyard, where they basically ruled that, yeah, they don't have a legal obligation. And we've learned about that in several horrible ways since then, how they can't really get in trouble for not intervening in potentially dangerous situations. So at the heart of all of this is the idea that they could just withdraw from the conflict because it's not their problem. It's that us protecting our own before we're actually protecting the peace or the justice or whatever. Who's looking out for morality in this world, to your point? And clearly nobody, because they're at war all the time, constantly, right, almost for practice.
And that goes back to our, are we on the good guys' side of the eco-terrorism argument in Final Fantasy VII, right? Who are the warriors of light? Are we warriors of light in that situation?
Right.
And this too, where is... We talked about this with Lord of the Rings, where there's obviously good guys and bad guys. But it's weird that there's an entire race of just bad guys.
Yeah.
Because that's not how a real world works. Well, this is much more about how a real world might work, in that there's not good guys and bad guys here. And Squall's even going to make that argument at some point in the future. But yeah, it's just, I don't see any warriors of light here. We talked about that with Ramza too. Like,
right.
Man, we're the bad guys. Fighting against the Death Corps.
Right.
Corpse. Corps.
You got it right the first time. So at this point, you can kind of choose to talk to everybody. And there's not a lot here, but it reminds me of something that a lot of military people talk about, that sort of hurry up and wait, the calm before the storm, the anxiety of on your way to the battle. And Zell is very much feeling it, saying it's his first battle. He's really nervous, and Cypher telling him not to piss in his pants, and them getting, you bastard, and would you guys, again, knock it off, right?
Boys.
And then when you're ready to go, you can speak to one of the soldiers, and they'll say, we'll be landing pretty soon, which I appreciate, because the landing is the name of the incredible piece of music that's about to kick in. So yeah, Ira, this cutscene, it's short. I always remember it as this big epic thing, but it's actually fairly short. But that music comes in, we get the first shot of the moon.
Yeah. Oh, the moon. I wonder if that'll be important.
Mm-hmm. Similar foreshadowing in Final Fantasy IV, and it's like enormous in the sky.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, in the reflection, right?
Right. So that's
and we're gonna.
It looks. I always thought, okay, we're looking up at the sky. The moon is enormous, and we're seeing these planes fly overhead with the chemtrails behind them. Right.
Weirdo.
Yeah. And I was like, wow, what an image, and it's kind of a classic military image of the planes flying in formation, again, World War I, World War II stuff across the sun or the moon, and kind of creates this great image. But then the image ripples.
Right.
And we realize we're looking at a reflection in the water. And then the vessels come by, and it's just the coolest little visual trick. It's so neat.
It's pretty slick. And throughout the game, we're going to see the moon giant against the sky, sometimes just off in the corner, sometimes off in the distance, right? But and that happens in Final Fantasy 15 too. Right. Whenever it's nighttime, the moon is always there.
Right. And so then as the music amps up and the vessels come into formation and they start approaching the beach, which has certainly echoes of Normandy to an extent, but with all this weird sci-fi technology. I love the way one of the vessels just sort of leaps up over the
right,
like the way they were built was meant to kind of jump over those embankments, like they've done this many times, right?
Right.
Oh, but before all that, before they actually do get to the beach, there's that great shot of Squall standing there at the edge of the boat. Yeah, you knew you knew I had to get at least one boat in there.
What boat in there? The boat. nautical term.
And there's this other incredible visual trick they do where we see Squall standing there and his face looking out into the distance, very stern, and his eyes narrow, which was the kind of micro expression that we really couldn't get before, even in Final Fantasy VII. And then he looks down and we see he's looking at a map of where they're going. And there's this sort of glossy, and again, nothing can just be normal. You can't just be looking at the map of where they're going to be entering the harbor or the bay. He's also got this weird, like, glossy military thing that he pushes over it. Did you not have transparencies when you were in school? I did, but not a ton of them. Yeah.
This is almost retro tech in a way. I've still got actually a box of transparency film in the copy room of the library because every once in a while a teacher will ask about transparencies so they can project things on the wall. And I'm like, you've got a projector connected to your computer. But yes, we do have a few, so you can run a copy on a transparency if you want. But yeah, I thought that was really neat. It's almost, like I said, retro tech.
Yeah. It's super neat. And whatever writing is on there is cleverly just in some language we do not speak. So again, it gives it that alien feel.
Sure.
But it kind of gives... It also has like one big like arrow pointing to like, you're going right here, which is kind of funny.
That's helpful.
It's maybe a little on the nose, but it is great the way he's looking at the image and then he flops over whatever military information he needs on the transparency. So he's got information on the map now, and he holds it out in front of his face to look at it. And then when he takes it down, he's looking at the image he was just looking at, but in real life, it's the harbor they're approaching, and it's so well done. And then we get another one of those great the cutscene transitions from CGI right into in-game as the boats all land on the beach. And it's so cool and so hype, man. I just remember thinking, like, this is going to be the greatest video game of all time. Like, this is so epic.
It is. It's super epic. And it sort of gets me amped up for the mission, even though, even at the time, I was feeling kind of like, well, I don't quite get it, but they're mercenaries, so fine, whatever. We had mercenaries in the last one. But it really is, okay, I'm ready. I gotta get to the square, and I gotta hold that square, and that's my mission, and I can do it.
Right. That's it for this episode. Thanks for listening, and thank you to everyone who's reached out to us. Feel free to let us know what we missed, got wrong, or should have mentioned by hitting us up on Twitter at FFWeeklyPod, or of course you can always do so right here on the Patreon page or in the Discord channel. As always, make sure that you are subscribed to the Everything is Final Fantasy YouTube channel, and if you're interested in other nerdy content, including Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones, Star Wars, and coming up very soon, Power Rangers, believe it or not, be sure to check out patreon.com/DC Productions. Be sure to join us next time as we commence the attack on Dalit. Yeah. Oh, what is this? This is a... got it. Got briefing. It. Found it. Thank you. No, I didn't. Damn it. I wanted to do it on my... I wanted to say that word by myself.
I'm sorry. I know you knew it.
I wanted to make sure that
you don't have to prove it to me.
All right. God damn it. It's going to be a fun one to edit. All right.